As woodworkers, it's only natural when we talk about outdoor furniture for us to ponder and debate which woods are the best, which finishes are the best, but how many of us actually have first-hand experience for what happens to a wood when it's left out in nature's elements? I personally don't have a whole lot of experience with it, but I did do a little experiment over the past few years, and I'm going to say it was on purpose, but it really wasn't. With all the moves that I did back and forth with my workshop, some boards just unfortunately were the unfortunate victims of my laziness. So I have a couple different species that we could take a look at. I want to show you what they look like after several years of aging, how bad the damage was, and then we'll try to mill some up to see if we can determine whether it would even be usable at this point. So let's jump right to it. So I'm thinking maybe we should do this game show style. Let me know what your score is and how many of these you got right. What do you think this is? I'll give you a hint, it's a domestic species, very common in the US. And in fact, this bench is made out of this stuff. This is maple. Right, see, we've got a lot of checking here at the end. You know, it's going to be common, especially for untreated wood that's left out in the elements. A lot of cracks and things through the bulk of the board. And after milling, this is what we've got. The cracks are still prominent. I don't know that this is a piece that I'd feel comfortable including in a project at this point, so I'd say this one is hosed, unfortunately. But you know, it's actually overall not too bad. These are not catastrophic problems, but certainly this is not something at this stage of the game that you would want to put into a good woodworking project. Next up is this little guy here. This is pretty easy. You could probably tell by the shape alone. This is just a Douglas fir 2x4. All right, doesn't fare too well, does it? That looks like crap. But after milling, okay, we can clean it up certainly, but man, these cracks, they're all the way through, almost. You know, I don't really think you can do a whole lot, or no, should you really expect to be able to after that type of treatment. All right, but that's Douglas fir. This is a fairly dense wood. Got a lot of checking here at the edges. Really no cracks on this side to speak of. This one is not too bad. The checks go back maybe 1 or 2 inches. All right, what do you think that is? That, my friends, is one of my personal favorites. That's white oak. Right? After milling, it actually looks pretty clean. Now, I do have more cracks on this side. Right? Those might be a little bit of a problem, and certainly at the edge, we would have to, you know, lose 3 or 4 inches from the end. But I think with a little bit more milling, we might be able to get past these cracks. And this could very well be a usable board. And white oak, generally speaking, has a reputation for being a little bit more durable outdoors. Right? So that's not too bad. So how about this ugly little beast? Right? It doesn't look so good, but if you take a closer look, there's really not much in the way of cracks here. You know, so it's dirty, but it is fairly stable. So after milling, what do we have? That is a piece of cherry, my friends. And I gotta say, I was really impressed. I mean, there's really no cracks on the surface. This is a perfectly usable piece of wood. Very impressed with how well cherry held up. Now this one is a dense exotic species. Any guesses? Right, that, my friends, is wenge. Right, after milling, it's not really that different in color. It's still that dark chocolatey brown, but you could start to see the typical patterns that are you know, commonly seen with wenge. Right, now the interesting thing was, I would have expected this wood to do a little bit better outdoors, but I've got significant cracks that I'm not really sure how far down they go. I mean, you could look at the end grain here, and you can start to see they're pretty deep. So we might be able to get some usable stock if we remove maybe, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch from each space. But I don't know, that just did not do as well as I thought it would have done. So good to know, but wenge. Here's another classic American domestic. Take a close look at the grain patterns. You'll probably see the typical cathedral grain patterns here. This is a piece of red oak. All right, and there it is milled up. Not too bad. There are some cracks here that could be a concern. And it really, for a piece like this that's 4/4, really depends on how far you are away from the edge. Because you can see at the very end of the board here, significant checking going on. So if you can move inward a little bit and then make your cut, you're probably going to get a much closer to usable piece of material here. So this isn't too bad. Yeah, I would actually say this is usable if you're hard up for some stock. And I saved the best for last. I thought this one would be the most fun. This is a dense, oily exotic. You could tap it and hear the tonality that's typical of these very, very dense exotic hardwoods. What do you think that is? That, my friends, is our good friend, Padauk. Look at that color difference. That's pretty dramatic, huh? Now, of course, Padauk always fades with time and goes to, I guess you could say, a less dramatic color, but when it's first milled, it is fiery orange red like this, but gets to a rather unremarkable brown color. I mean, it's not bad to look at, but it's certainly not quite what we've got here. Checks and everything, you know, this board held up really, really well. I see almost no flaws in it whatsoever, and that is something that you would come to expect from an exotic, especially one that has a high natural oil content, which is why things like teak, for instance, do very well and are very common for outdoor furniture. And finally, what's this? It's MDF. Now that was about as unscientific as a little experiment can be, and frankly I didn't do this on purpose, it was pure laziness, but when I saw all these little random boards sitting there, I figured, you know what, there's a learning experience there. This doesn't necessarily say what's going to happen to the wood in all climates, it just says what happened in mine. And frankly, some of the boards were under other boards, and that could certainly affect and impact how well it survives under these conditions. So hopefully that gives you at least some insight to what some of these woods will do outside. The bottom line is, any unfinished wood outside in just about any climate is only going to last so long. It really does need to have a finish or something protecting it, putting it under a covered patio or putting a cover on the outdoor piece to make sure it survives generation after generation. Otherwise, you just end up with crap. So, thought you might be interested in seeing it. Thanks for watching.